Now on Yorkshire Television, Grace Mulligan's back in the farmhouse kitchen, creating a few surprises as she's baking again.
There's nothing to beat home baking. If you're as fond of baking as I am, you won't be short of ideas today. If you bake only occasionally and need encouragement, there'll be something easy for you to try. Just look at what I've got here to show you. If you're fond of lovely sticky malt loaf, I'm going to show you how to make it very easily, very cheaply, about half the cost of a bought one, full of lovely juicy sultanas and just the right texture as well. And over here, an old favourite, a caramel slice with the 3 layers of shortbread and a soft caramel in the middle and chocolate to top it, both in white and brown chocolate. And over here, an old favourite, a dessert made with ginger biscuits, flavoured with ginger syrup. And doesn't it look handsome? You wouldn't believe how simple that is to do. And in front here, a magnificent pavlova, made like a meringue with a slight addition so that the texture of the meringue is lovely and soft and squidgy inside and crispy out. And over here, lots of the different things you can do with ordinary meringue and turn it into something very exotic, like these lovely cakes here with the bottoms dipped in chocolate and whipped cream sandwiched together. And here, little baskets, also very delicious and very easy to do for a party, filled with a lovely lemon-flavoured cream and some raspberries on top. And you can make meringues into all sorts of shapes very easily as well, and I'll show you that too. And at the bottom, I hope you can see the difference between the 2 colours of meringues. These are ones made with brown sugar and with white sugar, and it does make a lovely caramel flavour using the brown sugar. And over here, lots and lots of little biscuits, if you have the patience, from that same meringue. I'm using this lovely big new book of mine for a lot of today's recipes. It contains every possible kind of baking I could think of and includes some information about the type of ingredients and equipment I like to use, as well as some pages that I've called What Went Wrong. It's a companion to this big book, which we compiled a few years ago using nearly all the recipes which are contained in these 3 paperbacks. They are still available along with the microwave cookbook and Cooking for 1 and 2, both of which I use all the time. All of them are actually in the shops, but there will be more information about obtaining the paperbacks at the end of the programme. And now I'll make a start with that malt loaf, and you can find out how to make a moist loaf even more delicious than the bought ones. Now all the lovely flavourings for the loaf are here. Malt, 3 ounces of that, 2 ounces of black treacle and 1 ounce of margarine. All of that goes into a pan and melted till it's warm, not hot. But just to remind you of the way to measure anything as sticky and as difficult to measure as treacle, put your pan on the scales, check where the lever comes to, and then pour the stuff in until you get the weight. That's just a quick way of doing it, and it saves a lot of sticky spoons. But in fact, I've already got that melted and ready for going into my bowl of flour. But first of all, I must also mix my yeast liquid. In the jug here, I've got half a pint of warm water. Now, not hot, warm. And into that, I've already whisked, and that's why it's milky like that, 1 ounce of fresh yeast. So that's ready for going in, and here's my flour in the big bowl here. A pound of flour, not strong flour the way you would for ordinary bread making, but ordinary plain flour, either brown or white or wholemeal. And into that I'm putting a teaspoon of salt. So spread that out and give it a stir in. And it does help too to warm the flour a little bit. Now into that go all the lovely flavourings which are here. There's the treacle and malt here, all melted, and the margarine. I'll just get the spoon out and put it there. And that goes in. And just while I remember to say to you, of course, there's 2 kinds of malt. The one with a cod liver oil in, so don't go and pick that one. You'd have a very new recipe, but not many friends. And malt, do also check the prices, because there's a big variation I've found in the prices of malt extract, it's called. A lot of the health food shops have it. Now I'll put about half of this in and give it a stir to get started. And it's quite a sticky mixture you're aiming for. Sometimes you take rather more than half a pint of liquid, so I've got a very generous half pint in here. But do remember that it has to be warm, not hot. And I've got a short wooden spoon to pull it all together, because it's a stiffish mixture once I get it all in. There we are. That's it. Now stir it round, and it says in the book to beat it. Now it's not awfully easy to beat it, but you'll beat it round as hard as you can. And be sure you get all the dry flour incorporated. And there it is, coming together very nicely now. So we'll give it a good wallop round. And then the sultanas, and it nearly always is sultanas in malt loaves, if you'll notice, in the bought ones. So that's about right. And we'll put the sultanas in. And make sure the sultanas are not all stuck together. You know how they sometimes cling together in lumps. See that you go through them and make sure they're not doing that. So stir all that in. And in the recipe book, it actually says that you can do 2 pound tins. Now, that will, the pound tins are the usual size of bread tin, but in fact I'm using these nice little tins because they're exactly the size and shape of the bought ones. Grease your tin well, put a strip of greaseproof paper into the bottom, and one good big, I'm using my really big spoon, and just about half fill the tin, maybe just less than half fill it. Push it down to the sides, it's quite sticky, and there it is. Give it a shake, and that is ready for setting aside to rise. Now you'll see I've got one right next door, and I've covered it with a light film of polythene, and I've put some oil on it to make sure that it doesn't stick to the top. So that can go over there to be left aside until it gets to this stage, which is then ready for baking. But you maybe noticed that on the display I had some loaves with a flat top on them. And the way to achieve that is to put the bit of paper over the top, well the film won't be there of course, and put another tin on top, and that'll stop it rising quite so much. Now that's ready for going into a fairly hot oven, gas 6, 400 Fahrenheit, 200 centigrade, for about 40 minutes if you're using the pound tins. But the little tins will only take about 25 minutes to cook, and I've actually got one in the oven. There it is. And the last instruction in the book is to butter the top with, or paint the top with some, you butter after you slice it of course, but you paint the top over with melted butter just to give that lovely shiny finish to make it look so perfect. And have a look over here. All of these were made from that mixture and costing only 23 pence each, which is a big difference from a bought one, which varies from about 37 pence to 41 pence for one of these. So a good saving altogether. Now I'm going to go on to the caramel slices. Rich, delicious, and regrettably very fattening, especially when you see that I get 18 small slices at the cost of only 5 pence each. Now for the shortbread base, in the bowl here I've already got 4 ounces of margarine or butter you can use, creamed with 2 ounces of caster sugar, and to that I'm going to add 5 ounces of self-raising flour. So I'll scrape that down and I'll put the flour through a sieve. And that's always a good idea, whatever baking you're doing. I know it sometimes feels like an awful lot of nuisance, but it does make a difference in the long run to get a lighter texture. There we are. Now we'll stir that in, and what I'm aiming for at this point is a mixture which is almost like a paste, and I'm going to spread it in the tin rather than roll it out the way you would do if you're making shortbread biscuits. So stir that around so you get all this flour gathered up to this mixture, which is just like a piece of dough. In fact, you could roll this up into a big fat sausage, put it in the fridge, and then slice it when it's cold and make little shortbread biscuits. That's just about ready now. To to go into the tin. And I've got a Swiss roll tin here, which I've greased and lined with a strip of paper again, the way I always do, because it's safer to do that. And this is all stuck to the spatula. So pour that in and press it down. Now it's quite doughy, can you see that? So press it into the corners of the tin, and you can see that that will take a little while to do. See that you get it level, especially the corners. So I'll leave that, you don't want to see me standing doing that forever. And I'll give you the baking details. Once you've got that beautifully smooth, that goes into a moderate oven, gas 4, 350 Fahrenheit, 180 centigrade for about 20 minutes, and it should be golden all over and slightly risen at the sides of the tin like this one here. Can you see how it's given? That's because it's self-raising flour. So that has to be cooled down, ready for the toffee. And just before we leave this, have a look at this one. This is the same mixture, but the margarine was melted in a pan and the ingredients stirred in. Not quite such a crunchy texture, but easier to do if you don't care for all the beating. Now that has to be cooled down, and then I'll go on now and make the toffee. Now the ingredients for the toffee are out at the front here. Here they are. 4 ounces of margarine again, or butter, a small tin of condensed milk, 2 tablespoons of golden syrup, and caster sugar as well. Now all of that goes into the pan, and this is the colour it'll be. Can you see how pale that is? And that has to be melted gently until the sugar has gone. Until the sugar has melted, keep it off over a lowish heat. Can you hear that that sugar's still there? So that has to be brought up to the boil, a gentle boil, and at that point you stick with it until it's ready, because you must not leave it after you get to that point. Keep on boiling it until it gets to this colour. Can you see that? Always reminds me of my old camel coat, the colour, really rich caramel colour. Keep stirring it, don't leave it, because it'll catch very easily. Now what I'm aiming for is a stage called the soft ball stage, and that means if I drop a little of this into some cold water, that it'll form a ball. In fact, I'm sure it's at that stage now, because it's taking quite a while to go down into the water. But I should be able to lift that out and roll it in my fingers and say that it's at the right stage. Now let's feel it. Yes. Now, if you get it too hard, you'll end up with rather too much, a rather toffee-like consistency rather than a soft caramel. But if you get it too soft, you can put it in the fridge and keep it in the fridge until just before you're going to eat it. And if you get it too hard, you just cut it up into tiny little bits and say you've made some toffee rather than some little cakes. Now that has to be all spread out into the corners. In fact, this is a good way to do it, and bang it down so that it levels all the way out. And I've got one already at that stage over here. So all I have to do now, this is cooled, and I've spread it very carefully into the corners so that I don't have any thin corners. So there's 4 ounces of chocolate here, which I want to melt, and I've done that over a pan of water. Pour that on and level that off, and again, that banging movement is quite handy, and that has just to be done very carefully. And of course you can do that with white chocolate as well. And there you have caramel slices with a lovely chocolate topping. So if you have a look at the front, you'll see also that you can do it with white chocolate as well as the dark chocolate I'm using now. And now for the ginger biscuit slice, that very delicious recipe which requires no baking at all. It's an old favourite of ours since my children were very small and wanted to cook by themselves. Now the ingredients for the ginger slice are here. 8 ounces of ginger nuts or any kind of ginger biscuits, half a pint of double cream, or that's 10 fluid ounces, and I'm using the flavouring and a bit of stem ginger to flavour my cream. So I'd put about a dessert spoon of that ginger into the cream and whip it till it gets to the really fairly stiff stage. Now you've got to start the night before, and the reason for that is you want the biscuits to be soft. I spend my life telling people to shut biscuit tins up so that they keep the biscuits nice and crisp, but I'm doing the very opposite now, telling you to do this the night before so that the biscuits will get nice and soggy overnight in the fridge. Now once you've got all the biscuits done, you cover it up and cover your cream up as well and leave it to the next day until just before you're ready for your party. And here is the ginger slice with a lot of the cream already on it, and it's been put on in stars. In fact, if you don't want to do any piping, what you can do is just paint the cream on thickly and mark it with a fork, you know, and make it look like bark. So all the way down, cover the biscuits up. And then because I've used the ginger, oh dear, that shouldn't have happened. Because I've used the ginger flavouring in the cream, I'm using the ginger slices cut very finely just to decorate it. And if I could put it on in the middle, it would look even better. And if you don't have ginger slices, another very simple way of decorating would be to crush the biscuits up and just sprinkle them down so that they look rather attractive. And I think it looks quite nice with the rest of the biscuits just cut into halves and made scallops all the way down like that. Now we're ready now to have a look at the one that was on the table earlier on and cut a slice and see the very attractive pattern that the ginger biscuits make. So we'll have a generous slice. Cutting it on the diagonal like this shows the lovely pattern that the biscuits make inside. Now I'll go on to the meringues and those other variations on the meringue theme which show the enormous versatility of a humble egg white. Now, although you can make perfectly good meringues with fresh eggs, actually they're better if you get them a week old and get 2 good big ones like this. You see what, that's the #1 size. So a week old, separate the yolks off and put them aside to use in something else, maybe in pastry or making mayonnaise. And then put the egg whites into a gleaming clean bowl. Now that's not as silly as it sounds. Any little trace of oil or fat, maybe from your dishcloth when you're drying it out, will stop the egg white from whipping. Now you whip these egg whites until they get to the frothy stage, and electric whisk I find better. In fact, the little hand one seems to me almost better than the big one at the minute. And when you get the egg whites to the frothy stage, a pinch of cream of tartar and a pinch of salt. And it's that little bit of acid in the egg whites that make them really double in volume. You go on whipping until they're so stiff that you can turn them upside down like that. See? Now when they're at that stage, you now add the sugar. And here it is over here, 4 ounces of vanilla sugar. Now vanilla sugar is just caster sugar in which a lovely vanilla pod, a dried vanilla pod, is left so that flavour permeates the sugar. 4 ounces of that, and here's my bowl of 4 ounces. Now, the next stage is to go on whipping. So you're keeping this moving the whole time. Shake the sugar in about a tablespoon at a time. Don't add too much at a time, and go on and on whipping until you get it really, really stiff. And when all the sugar has been added, it should be like this in the big machine here. I'm just going to give it one last few seconds to make sure it's right. And then it should be very, very stiff indeed. All right, now I think that shows you very clearly how stiff the meringue should be. Can you see that? It should be just like that before you start even thinking about taking it out of the bowl. Now that's ready for putting into a great big piping bag, which I have here. And I've got a 1/2-inch star nozzle in the end of it there. So I'll use my giant spoon that I'm very fond of and push it right to the bottom. You see, I've folded the bag back so that I can get the maximum length of the spoon right down to the bottom. Oh, and I'm going to lose my bowl if I'm not careful. Oh, we'll put that over there. Now that's ready for pushing down. Shake it down to the end, and then you can start doing your thing. If you like great big whirly ones, this is the time to do it, or little dainty ones. So we'll do some big ones to begin with. Really big, generous big ones. They're like the ones that I did with the chocolate, aren't they, on the top? Now you could do a basket. That's quite simple. A little wall. There it is, for holding fruit or cream or a little jelly. Now over here is the heart shape. I've drawn it out on my non-stick paper, and I've put a layer of meringue just with a knife about 1/2 inch deep. So what I want now is a wall of stars. Now, one wall isn't quite sufficient, so I'm not going to go all the way around. I'll just show you that you put another layer there so that you get this nice rocky sort of wall. Now that looks very, very attractive, doesn't it? And now I'm going to go on to the nutty meringue biscuits that I often make when I do meringues. You get an awful lot out of a big quantity. But first of all, let me show you the nuts that I'm using. There are 4 ounces of flaked almonds. Here they are here. And I've had them under the grill in a tray and put them in until they're golden, not burned, just golden. Put them in a plastic bag, a good strong bag, and then give them a good old hammer. And this is all I'm doing, is breaking them down until they're quite small. Now that goes into a little bowl and put the meringues in. Now, I'm using my piping bag because I've already got meringue in here, but you could use a little teaspoon just to put little dots of meringue into the nuts. And all I'm going to do now is cover these little things with nuts and try very hard not to touch the meringue, because it'll stick to the spoon and stick to your fingers. Now there it is, ready for going on to the non-stick paper again. There we are. We'll do another one. Do it very gently. And there you are. You get such a lot of these, but I have to admit it does take a lot of patience. Now both of these and the meringues need a very cool oven. Gas 1, 275 Fahrenheit, 140 centigrade. The little nutty biscuits will take only an hour, but for the bigger meringues, allow 1.5 to 2 hours, or longer if you can. I have a friend who cooks meringues all night long so that they're lovely and crisp all the way through. But if you like a nice soft centre, a couple of hours should be plenty. And now for the pavlova. And if you have friends who live down under, you'll know that all Australians make perfect pavlovas. Now, Mrs. Rita McEachran of Adelaide in Australia sent us this recipe, and from the size of it, it'll serve at least 12 to 14. She must have a very extended family. This is almost made in exactly the same way as the other meringue. The only difference is double the quantity, 4 egg whites and 8 ounces of caster sugar, but there was no cream of tartar put in, no salt, but the other additions are over here at my side, and they were, just when we got the meringue made and lovely and stiff, folded in at the very last minute was a teaspoon of vinegar, a teaspoon of vanilla essence, and a level teaspoon of corn flour. All that was mixed together and folded into the stiff meringue, and the reason for that was that it's going to keep the meringue from cooking too crisply, and it's going to make it so that it's lovely and soft and marshmallowy inside, and like this, ready to bake. Now that goes into a coolish oven, gas 1/2, 250 Fahrenheit, 120 centigrade for an hour, and then the oven switched off, but leave it in the oven overnight if you possibly can to let it dry off. And then it should be at the stage that this splendid one is here, beautifully crisp on the outside and lovely and soft on the inside. And that's why the addition of the corn flour and the vinegar, it stops it from setting crisply all the way through. Now I'm going to lift a piece out and see if we can see how lovely and tender it is inside, and very delicate it is too, and wonderfully creamy and crunchy to eat. There it is, and it's absolutely delicious. And of course the filled one is over here, and for that all you do is whip about 1/2 pint of double cream and then put any kind of fruit on that you like. In fact, the fruit that is here is kiwi fruit and strawberry and mandarins, and it looks very magnificent too, doesn't it? And on that wonderfully splendid note, in honour of the great dancer Anna Pavlova, for whom this sweet was created in Australia, I must say farewell for the moment. And I should say, good on ya, or as they say in Dundee, where I come from, lang may your lum reek and the sunshine on your bunker. And last but not least, may the moose ne'er leave your meal poke wi' a tear in his ee. Cheerio!
Well, needless to say, after that was the last in the present series of Farmhouse Kitchen.